tonight with you all. I'm going to share my screen now because I'm going to start the presentation. This is going to be hopefully a fun trip for you all. It's kind of late in Brazil, but I know some people from Brazil are watching as well, and from all over the world, hopefully, because we're going to talk about fungi from all over the world right now. We're going to talk about the many uses of fungi by humans. Not only by humans, but by animals too. I love watching the interactions that happen in nature with animals eating mushrooms and all that. And we're going to go into that trip right now. So right now in this, you see some mushrooms. These are all from Brazil, actually. You see some Ganoderma. It's all from the Atlantic forest from Brazil, these pictures. You see Earth Star over here, that it's a Mediostoma coliforme. It's different from the Geastrum because it has a lot of holes on the top, while Geastrum has only one. And we're going to talk about Earth Stars a lot, but I just want to introduce to you this one because I really love this one. And I have some here to show you guys as well. It's already like coming out, the spores. I don't know if you guys can see that, but the spores of these Earth Stars, I like the smell of them a lot, much better than other puffballs and Earth Stars that I smelled. And we have some Trametes sanguinea as well, and we're going to talk a lot about him. And I have some here. He's accompanying me in this journey now. So I want to start by sharing a little bit how it all started for me, how I got into my ethnomycology, how I got into fungi, because a lot of people ask me, how did you get into mushrooms? It's kind of not a common thing to be into here in Brazil, but it's getting bigger now, and because of many teachers and fantastic fungi, everybody's hearing about more about mushrooms. And for me, it all started with agriculture, with biodynamic agriculture, organic agriculture, and traditional ecological knowledge. So traditional ecological knowledge is indigenous wisdom with scientific knowledge together. It's how our indigenous ancestors used to live, and how their deep wisdom of the ecosystem, wherever indigenous people have lived around the world. They lived for millions, for thousands of years. So they have a lot of ecological knowledge about the ecosystem where they are. And so our ancestors did agriculture for a long time, for a long time. Even hunters and gatherers, they were not only gathering, in that sense, they were also gardening a lot. They were carrying seeds and also taking care of plants, taking care of mushroom spots, wherever they had, the knowledge that these places were. And anyways, I finished law school. Actually, I passed the bar exam and never touched law again. I hated it. But during law school, I was gardening a lot as therapy because I loved it. I loved digging the soil. I just loved the soil. I loved seeing the earthworms and the roots and what was happening. And I just realized that's what I wanted to do in my life. But since I was already on my third year of law school, I decided to finish it and get through it. But I did a lot of environmental law, and I don't like politics, so I guess. And I also just like being with the earth. I like just being in nature. I was a kid that was a lot of times at the farm. My dad used to carry me in the horse since I was a baby. And I used to take care of a lot of animals and homeless dogs and cats around here in Brazil. So I loved nature since I was small, but I just didn't know that that was my big passion, and that my job was going to be to take care of it. But yeah, and I wanted to take care of it the best way I could. And I went to California, where I had back in 2014, and I got started on the journey of permaculture and biodynamic farming and all these amazing teachers. I got access because I was in the Bay Area. I was at San Francisco and Berkeley, so I was definitely in a really good spot to get really good education. And I took the opportunity, wherever opportunity I could, to just learn with the masters. And this is one of them. This is Willow Summer, and she did teach me how to do the best compost pile. And I carry that with me wherever I am. Even if I'm living in an apartment, I am doing my compost. And I'm so glad that I've met her, and she was a wonderful teacher. And biodynamic composting is so amazing. I recommend everyone to learn a little bit more and just do that wherever you are in the world, even if it's in a bucket. It's really worth it. So yeah, I just want to say that because of agriculture and because of the so much importance of fungi and mycorrhiza and all these things that really help the soil, that's how I got into fungi, because 30% of the soil is fungal mass. So there is no way you can just ignore that. If you are a farmer or a gardener, you need to just tend the soil. You need to tend the mycelium. Once you tend the mycelium, that's all you need for your plants. They provide everything. So yeah, building communities and networks over and underground. And who is doing that for us underground is the mycelium. Mycelium is the body of the mushroom. So what we see here, this mushroom here, it's a mycorrhiza species. It's a suillus. It's very similar to it's a porcini mushroom, and it's underneath in the soil. It's doing all these connections with the trees and helping the trees to survive. And also, and the trees are also really thanking them for being there and providing nutrients for them as well. It's a total symbiosis. And trees definitely love them because they are very healthy. If they have mycorrhiza fungi with them, they really do help them survive. So we see here the mycelium, which is just kind of networks. It's hyphae. It's a group of hyphae. This hyphae is just like this threads, these white threads that you see, and the group of them forms the mycelium, which is the real body of the mushroom. It's like we're seeing the whole tree here, and just the mushroom is just the fruit. Just a little bit of an introduction to the people that don't know much about fungi, but I'll get into the ethnomycology soon. And then, yeah, so fungi, actually earthworms love mycelium. So earthworms really do seek for myceliums underneath, and earthworms castings is the best nutrient for your plants. That's all you need for your plants, earthworms and mycelium. So for that, all you have to do is cover the soil. It's organic matter. It's having wood chips to cover the soil. It's having like leftover of leaves of plants that are dying, and just leaving that to let things rot. Just let things rot, and all you need is mycelium. That's rock and roll, guys. I love rock and roll, and definitely mycelium. The mycelium has a lot of phosphorus in it and a lot of nutrients. Mycelium is pure nutrients and protein and phosphorus. So one of the big problems in agriculture is phosphorus, right? I don't know why they have to source that from the earth, but when all you need is to cover your soil and organic matter, and all you need is mycelium. So I have been gardening for almost like farming for almost 10 years now. And this is a pictures from my garden from today. And as you can see, I have a lot of mushroom friends growing in the garden. And they're growing with my tomato plants. So I have medicine and I have food and I have these amazing decomposers who are helping microbes in the soil to decompose things and putting back the carbon in the soil. And so plants can use that again. So the amazing decomposers, not only mycorrhizal fungi is very important, but also saprophytic fungi and also endophytic fungi. They're fungi living inside the plants, helping the plants from inside of them. So yeah, let things rot, and all you need is mycelium. And I have to thank all my Indigenous friends for teaching me, and I have to thank Radical Mycology and Peter McCoy for being one of the first teachers that I had. He is a great person. He came to the Indigenous Wisdom and Permaculture Skills Convergence, which was an event that I was helping organize to help the Lakota people bring infrastructure and knowledge, ecological knowledge, and just help them and also learn with them. All I really wanted to do is really get in touch with Indigenous cultures. So I really wanted to help them and give back for all they have had to suffer in American colonization history. And so Peter McCoy came in 2017 in our first year there, and he taught us mushroom cultivation. And we did the convergence for 3 years in a row, and until the last year of the convergence, we had shiitake still growing, and we were still like growing mushrooms. And yeah, and I'm gonna talk more about the Lakota wisdom and about them, but also I want to thank Paul Stamets for sure for inspiring me so much. Back also into beginning of 2017, February at the Eco Farm, the ecological conference in Monterey, California. He was the keynote speaker that year. And the Eco Farm was just an amazing conference. And it was just so inspiring being with so many amazing growers and organic farmers. And Paul Stamets there just blew the whole thing up. It was just like, I got out of that presentation just crazy about fungi, and I never stopped. I did as he said. I ran as fast as I could. And I'm here because he inspired me so much. And yeah, thank you, Paul. I was in California, so I got to see many of his talks later in the years, and I got to experience a lot of good things there. The first Indigenous peoples that I met and that embraced me were the Indigenous women of the Siguriate Land Trust, amazing women who are rematurating the land. They are doing the work of doing community gardens, and they are just receiving land back from people who wants to give them, the Indigenous people, back land in California, and they are just doing gardens and community spots. And I just loved California native plants so much, and I just wanted to give back. I just wanted to do something for these amazing people. And I did a garden at Plant Justice nursery for them. It was a huge garden, a huge Hugo culture bed. And Hugo culture is really cool. It's a technique that uses a lot of organic matter, and it really helps the soil, really helps the mycelium to grow, as you guys can see. I used all of this that was like on site. It was just there lying around, and all you have to do, like with the gardening, guys, is just like organizing organic things and putting that in the right place to give back to Mother Earth in the right way. And Yes, and I learned so much with the California indigenous people and with the native plants and mushrooms from there. I started doing a lot of biodynamic preparations and healing balms and tinctures and beers because I also wanted to be free from pharmaceuticals. I wanted to live a good life, that I respected Mother Earth and I respected myself as well, because you have to respect your body too, and don't put toxins if you don't have to. And all I needed was to get back the knowledge of my ancestors about plants and about even like new knowledge, scientific knowledge, so much scientific knowledge coming up about mushrooms and about medicinal plants. So I just had it to bring both together to have a better life and make mushroom beers, get that knowledge back, something that was prohibited in the 1500s by like a German law, the Bavarian Act. And I wanted to bring that back. I want to bring ancestor knowledge back, and fermentation is one of the best things for your health. And fermentation is also fungi. It's unicellular fungi doing the work. It's yeast, and it's because of them that we have bread, that we have beer. So during COVID, I baked a lot of bread. I did a lot of fermentation. I was just baking bread and making pizza and sauerkraut and all these amazing good things for you. And I just started doing tinctures and balms and everything with mushrooms as well. I'm very curious, and I just research a lot, and I also do my own experiments, and yeah, but it does go into a lot of research, and also like having met elders who passed on their wisdom to me was very essential too. So yeah, here are some of them. I just have to thank all the indigenous people that sat down with me and had tea. Usually the tea that I made, and I made them drink because I always did. Even like my really good friend, the Anishinaabe Vicky, she gave me the name of Little Sister Cedar because I used to carry cedar tea wherever I went and give to whoever wanted. And also, not only the elders, I just want to give a shout out to the amazing youth that is also regenerating knowledge and following the ancestors' path and following a good path. We want to honor our ancestors and defend our descendants. We want to have a good earth for the next generations. The Lakota always say to think about the next 7 generations. I also really want to thank the midwives around the world and the Mayan midwives that I met. Amazing Mayan women that are just so great, doing ceremonies and still preserving some knowledge. The elder told me how she couldn't go to the forest anymore to forage mushrooms, how like people from the community now brings the mushrooms to her. So she recognizes which ones are edible and which ones are not. And it was just pretty amazing because she can't walk anymore. That's one of the things that she was really sad about. And then she's like, you're really lucky to be walking, to be able to walk and explore. And I was like, yeah, I'm really happy to be walking all around the world into forests all around. And the books are one of the most amazing teachers that I had as well, because they also help us to bring back knowledge that has been lost by traumas, by so many bad things that happen to so many indigenous populations around the world. Many of these books hold knowledge that have been lost by the population, and that's one of the missions that I have in my life too, is to bring them their own knowledge back. And here's my Anishinaabe family, and here's me in the snow. I lived for 2 years in Michigan in the snow. It was just so cold. But I loved it. I still I miss the snow at this moment. I miss harvesting mushrooms during winter time. I used to go for chaga, of course, doing that very sustainably. But I had a wonderful forest around my home, and I would just put in my snowshoes and go find some chaga, because it's the best time of the year to harvest chaga. Actually, is during winter time. So I'm holding here a birch polypore, and I'm just so happy. We found that birch polypore during our walk, and I love birch polypore, such a medicinal mushrooms. But here we are walking for the water, guys. We're trying to shut down line 5. My friends, amazing youth, did a walk for the water from the Mackinac Bridge to Lansing, which is really far away. And yeah, I just helped them a little bit along the way. I walked with them a little bit, but I just wanted to support them however I could. And this is my amazing Anishinaabe family. I miss you all. There's more people that it's not here, and I just, yeah. Chaga and cedar was how I got through winter, and also white pine and other amazing polypore mushrooms. They helped me so much. And chaga is just like the best medicine you can ever get, ever, for your immune system and for curing cancer as well. It's such a good mushroom. So these days, I'm very passionate about the use of mushrooms, right? I love ethnomycology, and I found Fungi Foundation to help with, and I do some collaboration with them. I help at the Elders Project. And the Elders Project is this amazing project that we are trying to create an interactive map with the many uses of mushrooms around the world that you're going to be able to access and see how me being one of the persons that summarize many articles and books and conversations around the world with indigenous peoples and traditional societies and local communities about how they use fungi. So I'm really happy that that's going to happen soon. And just thank you all from Fungi Foundation. You guys, whoever can support Fungi Foundation, there are many ways of supporting them, and fungi education as well. And you guys get a lot of education from them. Fungi education is an amazing, amazing project as well. And if you are a teacher, I really recommend fungi education to go into and learning more about how to teach kids about fungi, how to do really fun activities as well. So my job, I volunteer, right, with Fungi Foundation, and I do a lot of research. I read a lot of articles and books around the world about mushrooms. I dig in, and I just research a lot, and I have the help of Christian to find me some articles as well. And some of the most amazing articles are here that I found. I just brought some examples, but there's so much more around the world. And I really want to thank all the ethnomycologists and researchers that put the effort to help indigenous peoples to preserve all this knowledge that they have. And just it's because of them that we know what mushrooms to eat, what mushrooms are medicinal, and so many more uses. There's so many uses of mushrooms. There are many categories of uses of mushrooms, not only edible, not only medicinal. We have ceremonial uses of mushrooms, like mushrooms used for smudging, mushrooms that have the smell of flowers that you can use for sacred purposes as well. We have many cultural and spiritual mushrooms that are very important for the culture of the people, very important for spiritual connections as well. We have, of course, medicinal. We have ornamental and decorative mushrooms, which are mushrooms used to beautify things. And many mushrooms are so beautiful. There are mushrooms that are so colorful and beautiful, like this amazing purple earth star here, and many indigenous people use the mushrooms to decorate things. We have instrumental and material uses, which are so many. One of the biggest ones is fire, and mushrooms used to catch a fish that help you to catch a fish. Mushrooms used for sharpening knives. It's really it's a really big world of uses here on this category. We have cosmetic uses of mushrooms. One of them is, of course, the Trametes sanguinea, which you can use as a blush. You can just like pass on your skin, and it's just like a blush. Many indigenous women use Trametes sanguinea as a blush. So we have recreational uses. Of course, you can use puffballs as balls. You can play with puffballs a lot. Of course, we have textile, which use mushrooms used as fabrics. We have mushrooms used for dyeing. Another one, Trametes sanguinea again. And then we have agriculture and horticultural uses of mushrooms. Mushrooms that can help you in your food production, in your agriculture. Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of these uses pretty soon. I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of threatened ecosystems, a lot of threatened knowledge around there. It's when we lose forests, we lose fungi. There are fungi that really need like old growth forests to survive. Yeah, so we need preserved forests to have a big diversity of species of mushrooms, and also to preserve some species of mushrooms. If we lose plants, we lose mushrooms. It's just nature is connected, everything is connected, guys, and mushrooms are really so important for the ecosystem and for that balance of the ecosystem. It really protects the ecosystem. It's like they're the big protectors of the ecosystem. So we need them, and we need indigenous people. We need their knowledge and their skills of preservation as well. How you can live in balance in the ecosystem that you are. And they hold the key for that because they have lived for thousands of years in the same spot. So you know how much wisdom there is in that. We have to respect that. And wherever I sat down with indigenous people, all you really have to do is listen to them. You know, it's just listen to what they have to say and help however you can help. But many times we just have to connect. We just have to be friends and respect each other, and then that's what is important. Here's IUCN, which has a lot of the fungi that is threatened. It's growing. It's a community effort, so it's really important that people start like categorizing this kind of things and helping us identify species that are very rare and very in risk, environments that are in risk. And so species of mushrooms are also in risk. So here's one of them. I found this in the Atlantic forest in a really special spot. It was like in the middle of the forest, like a spot that nobody went there for probably like 30 years or more, who knows. And Hikiela edulis was there, which is a ascomycete. It's an edible mushroom. It's very good, actually. I didn't know it was an endangered species, and I just collected one of them to take home and identify. And when I looked into it, it was like, oh my gosh, it's endangered. Oh, I took one out. Oh no, what do I do? I eat it, of course. I ate it. I wouldn't waste it. And the smell of it, everything, it really looked very edible, and it was very delicious. It's a good texture. It's like a hard texture sort of, and yeah. So we need this fungi, and we need the preservation of it, and we need to cultivate this fungi too. We need to the cultivators out there in the world. We need to cultivate species that are in risk as well. Preserve the DNA of them. This is the fungi, right? So we need to insert this word fungi here. into legislations, into policies around the world, because not only flora and fauna deserve to be protected, but also fungi and all this amazing diversity of species that we see here. And it's so amazing. All these mushrooms, we have coral mushrooms, we have star the mushrooms that look like stars, and mushrooms that look like coral, and mushrooms that look like birds' nests, and mushrooms that look like flowers, and gelatin mushrooms, and these amazing phallus, which is, I love the phallus, the species that has this dropping the, I don't know how to say in English, sorry. the veil maybe. Yeah. But anyways, so getting into ethnomycology now, two very important uses of mushrooms, very, very, very important, that have been, I have found these uses all around the world, is first, it's fire. Mushrooms have been used by our ancestors to carry fire, to start fire, for a long, long time. And it was like one of the survival skills that you had to have a good life, especially if you live in the north. It was so important, and so important to have all these mushrooms. All these mushrooms here have been used for fire. Like the chaga is really important for the Anishinaabe. The fire keepers are, they still are aware that chaga can be used for starting a fire, for carrying fire. And Amadou, of course, and the red-belted polypore have been used. And so Oti the Iceman, right, was one of the oldest mummies ever found in the world, and he was carrying the Amadou here. And yeah, so we suspect that that was because it was for making fire, right? He used these mushrooms to make fire. So this is the mushroom that he was carrying, the Amadou. And yeah, also in New Zealand, the Maori people also used this mushroom, which is a Laetiporus species, also to carry fire. So in New Zealand as well, which is really amazing. All around the world, guys, Indigenous people have used mushrooms for that. And recently, there was a Bear Grylls show, right, on Nat Geo, that he used Trametia sanguinea to carry fire. And Ashton Kutcher actually was the mushroom man. And it was so interesting to see that, because it was the first time that I was seeing how to use Trametia sanguinea to carry fire. I knew about how to carry fire from other mushrooms, like the Amadou, and sometimes because they're big, you can just make a hole, carve a hole in it, a little hole, and put some like fire in it, and then just close it again with like the other half of the mushroom, or with another mushroom, and just wrap it up, and then you can carry that for a long distance, for a long time. And Trametia sanguinea was the first time that I saw, and I kind of could guess from like what he was doing, that first he used like a very dry species to light it up, to let the fire start. And these mushrooms, they burn like incense. They burn really slowly, guys. That's why you can carry fire for a long time. So I saw him lighting like the dry species, and then he got a bigger one, a bigger mushroom, and then he just wrapped it up, the mushroom that was lit, into the bigger mushroom, and then like he closed in a cloth and just carried the fire throughout the whole episode with Ashton. Even, yeah, it was really interesting. I recommend for you all who has the curiosity to see how to carry fire, to see that. Also, Ganoderma species have been used, and puffballs. Puffballs have been used to carry fire as well. They were really important. Some people even like the Mapuche have been used that for carrying as a torch. So yeah. So another amazing use of mushrooms that really blew my mind in all my research was the puffballs. Puffballs have been used for cauterizing, for healing wounds, all around the world. They have been used to stop bleedings. They're really good to stop bleedings. The spores of puffballs and earth stars. So guys, you guys see here Cavacia gigantea. You see the spore mass, the really amazing spore mass of these mushrooms, and it has been used all around the world for that. Even like in not so long ago in Europe, that was like the main thing that you use to stop a bleeding or to cataract, to heal a wound. It's really good for that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. The difference between puffballs and earth stars is that earth stars, they open the exoperidium. That's so puffballs, they just keep they just stay as a ball. And then the earth stars, they open this outer layer here that we call the exoperidium. So that's the difference between them, but the spores of them both and of various species, a lot of species, all the species of puffballs and earth stars, the spores of them have been used the same way. This is to like help heal the skin. So the amazing spores that we play with a lot of times when we see them in the woods, they're actually one of the best things that you can have in your house for an emergency, as like cutting your hands, and yeah, for your animals too. And I'm going to talk about more about that as well. It's good for other skin problems, but also, so there is one thing. So we see the spores of puffballs and earth stars when they are mature. So when they are still immature, when they're still growing, there are a lot of them, a lot of puffballs especially. I didn't get to try earth stars, but the puffballs, especially the Cavacia species, are edible. They're very, very edible. So when a puffball is edible is when it's still white inside. When it starts to get a little bit yellow, don't eat that at all. But when it's still white inside, it's very edible. You can do, as you guys can see, Fantastic Fungi Community Recipes is a really good place to look for recipes of mushrooms. And they have this one, which is a puffball pizza. You can do like the Cavacia gigantea, which is the huge puffball, the gigantic puffball. You can cut it and make as the pizza dough. Because the puffball don't have a lot of taste, it's pretty tasteless, the puffballs. So it's really good because it soaks up the taste of olive oil, and it just acts as a dough, right? So yeah. But once they mature, as you guys can see here, this Cavacia species, she's maturing, right? And over here on the right is when the spores are ready. The Cavacia is super interesting species. They don't have like holes. As they mature, the whole spore mass, the whole spore mass is here. And it's so fluffy. It's like, it's so soft. It's so good for the skin. You can just do it like straight on your skin. Of course, guys, you have to kind of watch out for the spores going to your eyes. Of course, you don't want like a cloud of spores going to your eyes, and you don't want to like snore the spores, of course, as well. Don't do that. But they're really safe, really, really safe for like just putting on your skin. I also put like on my cat's ears to heal her ears as well. And yeah, it's super safe. Over here, we have a species that is not edible when it's young. It's the Scleroderma. This is a mycorrhiza puffballs. So they are, people say they are not edible when they are younger, but the spore mass has been used as medicinal, as the same medicinal uses as I've been telling you, as other species. And I used a lot of the spore mass. The name of the spore mass is Gleba, the scientific name. Okay, guys. So I use the gliba of the scleroderma a lot for healing wounds, and it really helps. It really helps, and a lot of indigenous people have used it as well. And we have Pistolitus here, which is also a puffball. Some consider a puffball. Sometimes it really is shaped as a puffball. Sometimes it has like the weirdest shapes ever. But Pistolitus is a species that is not very edible to. I read that the Aboriginal people of Australia, because it's also it grows in Australia, of course, because there is the eucalyptus trees there. The eucalyptus trees are from Australia. So the Aboriginal people, they would eat in some emergency, as an emergency food, the young, very young Pistolitus species. But I wouldn't recommend. It's very, very, this, if you ever open a Pistolitus, it doesn't make you want to eat it. It's just very weird, but it's very good to use as a dye for dyeing clothes. And yeah, and the spores for healing the skin. The spores of the Pistolitus are amazing, very, very healing as well. Very antibiotic, antimicrobial too. So we have really interesting species of Calvasia. And I love Calvasia so much. This is one of my favorite puffballs. And the Calvasia sculpta has been used in California by the Milwaukee people. They mix the spores with bear fat and use it as a sunblock. It's very good for protecting your skin from the sun as well. And this method of mixing the spores with oils has been applied to all over the world. And that's so interesting. Like in Spain, of course, because there's a lot of olive oil, they use the olive oil to preserve the spores of puffballs and earth stars, right? So the olive oil would be the medium, and in India, it would be the mustard oil that they would use, and in Argentina would be the sunflower oil. So I did this oil here for you guys to see. It's with the spores of the mediostoma with the earth star. And this is just super interesting. It gets super dark. But I use this oil a lot, and I make balms with it, and it's super healing. It's super amazing. It protects the skin as well. And then we have the amazing earth stars, right? I just absolutely love earth stars. And all these pictures that you guys are seeing here, I tried out all these species of mushrooms. I used all of them in my skin, and yeah, I'm also creating my own experiences, and I know the risks that I'm taking, but I know also I study a lot before using anything, and that's my recommendation for you guys as well. And we have so many amazing diversity of earth stars in the Atlantic forest of Brazil. We really need to protect the Atlantic forest, as you guys can see. So many colors.
Yeah. So there was a question that came up from Rachel about whether or not the puffballs and the earth balls are edible. And you did cover the edibility of the puffballs when they're young. Maybe the earth stars, now that you're getting into that, are they edible when they are immature?
So yeah, they're supposed to be edible too when they are immature, but I haven't experienced with them yet eating, because I love them so much for the spores that if I see them on the wild, I just let them mature so I can use the spores, because usually the earth stars are much smaller than puffballs. Sometimes it's not even worth harvesting the earth star because it's so much smaller. But when they are younger, I believe they're edible as well. But they do have an outer layer that is much thicker than a puffball, because as you guys can see, because it opens, right, the peridium, it is much thicker than a puffball. So once I tried like to see if it was like kind of edible and all that. And I had like this thick layer to kind of get through the more fleshy part. So yeah, it is known to be, a lot of them are known to be edible, but yeah, that's all I can say about that on my own experience. Yeah. So now we're gonna go into the plains of the United States. We're gonna go into the indigenous peoples of the Northern American plains. And these amazing indigenous peoples over here, they love the buffalo and they really depended on the buffalo. Some of them is the Piegan people, and for them the puffballs are very sacred. The puffballs, they represent the North Star on the earth. The same name for North Star and puffball, it's Kakatozi. They use the same name for both of them. And I don't know if you guys know, but the stars, it's very important for ours, was very important. It is still very important for us and for our ancestors, but especially for our ancestors, because it was their map. It was how they used to guide themselves. And it was also how they used to tell the time at night. The Piegan used to look at the North Star and know what time it was by the position of it in the night sky. So it was a representation of the North Star on Earth was the puffball. And as you guys can see, this is a teepee of the Blackfoot of the medicine lodge of the blood reserve. And on the bottom of it, you see a lot of circles, and these are actually the representations of puffballs. These are to represent puffballs because they also use the puffballs for fire. So this represented that you were in a safe, fiery place as well. It was calling the fire as well to have the puffballs. Puffballs were so important for the indigenous people of the plains because they are also one of the very abundant mushrooms there. When I was in Pine Ridge, the Lakota Reservation, I would ask my friends around, what mushrooms do you have? What mushrooms? And then they would be like, oh, puffballs. A lot of them answered about puffballs. And when I went to a sun dance, which is a very sacred, very, very sacred ceremony of the Lakota, that they dance for 4 days on the sun, and they do sacrifices on the skin. They do a lot of piercing. And when I was there in the sacred place, I saw on the table where the people would go to heal themselves, there were puffballs, and they were using puffball spores to heal their sacred wounds. So for the Lakota people, puffballs are also very important. It's Linda Black Elk tells us that they use the puffballs to heal the navel of the baby. As soon as the baby is born, they use the puffball spores to heal the baby's navel. It's so beautiful because it's such a big connection to be one of the first things that you see when you're born is a puffball. And it was very important for the Anishinaabe people too. So the Anishinaabe people are the people from the Great Lakes, right? The Anishinaabe people used puffballs for healing the skin, for skin problems too, a lot. But this amazing book from Wade Inokwe, which is an amazing ethnobiologist, indigenous person who left so much knowledge for us about plants and about mushrooms and how the Anishinaabe people used to use them. She told us on this book about how they would use puffballs and also polypore mushrooms, amadus and ganodermas to harvest the bees, to harvest the honeys of the bees, the honey bees. So they would use the smoke of these mushrooms to smoke the beehives. So when you harvest honey, usually you need some smoke to distract the bees from the pheromones that they're sending to each other to warn that there is danger coming, right? Where the human beings are coming to get their honey. So honey is really important for them as well. So usually the beekeepers use the smoke to distract those pheromones, right? And the smoke of mushrooms has been used by indigenous peoples for that for a long, long time. And what she tells us is that her grandfather used to teach her that the polypar mushrooms are really pleasing to the bees. The bees like the smell of the mushrooms and they get relaxed by it. So on the day of the harvest, the grandfather would first light polypar mushrooms, just start smoking them and bring them to the bees and start talking to the bees, thanking the bees for the honey that he was about to collect. And then when it was time to harvest the honeys, they would light puffballs. So they would like put the puffballs on sticks and light the puffballs and put them in a circle around the beehive. And then at that time, get the honey, because she tells us on this book that puffballs are also really good for anesthetizing. They make the bees sleepy and very relaxed, the smoke of them. So I just, when I was like bees and mushrooms, of course, bees and mushrooms, I was reading this story and I was so amazed by it. And I was just like, oh my God, the bee man shaman. I just thought about that really famous petroglyph in the Sahara Desert that is, everybody knows about the bee man shaman in the mycology world, because it's the oldest, one of the oldest, I think it's the oldest painting about mushrooms that we have from our ancestors. And here it is, the bee man shaman, of course, the famous petroglyph. It's a carving that they did in a cavern in the Sahara Desert. When the Sahara wasn't the Sahara, when the Sahara was a very humid place, it wasn't a desert. It was actually a forest. So these people inhabited the Sahara when it was a very humid period. Not very humid, but it was the location that these paintings were. It was a place that would be more humid than other areas around, and yeah. So we have more paintings from those people that are related to mushrooms. We have this famous, also these guys that are just kind of running with mushrooms. And I think when when mycologists saw these paintings, I think they thought about psychedelic mushrooms right away, right? They were like, because the paintings in these caverns, they're very ceremonial as well. They do have a lot of figures that are using masks, and it seems like important moments of their lives that they painted. It seems like it was ceremonial places that they were at, but there were also other paintings and other carvings there that depict the common life as well of this place. So these paintings are here in the Sahara Desert, guys, in Algeria these days, in the Tassili region. And some amazing archaeologists have been researching them. I have to thank Jitika Sukpova, who allowed me to use all the images of the roundheads, and who categorized all of them for everyone to see on this amazing website. So the name of this population that drew the bee man shaman, it's the roundheads. So they called them the roundheads because they had really round heads, right? Really rounded heads. And these people, they left a lot of stories for us just to guess who were they, what were they doing 10,000 years ago, maybe even older than that. But people say that they lived in this area around 10,000 years ago, and they were hunters and gatherers, and they were showing us their daily ceremonies in life as well. And it's really interesting because I thought about this. I thought about the Man Shaman, and I just thought about if this population used other mushrooms as well, like maybe they were a population that really liked mushrooms. And it does seem like it. Look at this, like look at them with their brown heads. It just like made me think of puffballs right away. This looks like an amanita head. It's so interesting to see all the drawings that they have, and there's so many things that really reminded me of mushrooms. And I think they maybe were a society that did have other ways of mushrooms, and not only the psychedelic uses of mushrooms. And the bee man shaman might not even be a bee. That's another thing. It might be another animal. It's very interesting to know that as well. But like ethnomycologists, I mean, mycologists, they related the beam because a lot of indigenous populations around the world preserved mushrooms in honey, especially psychedelic mushrooms were preserved in honey by, and are still are being preserved in honey by many peoples. And they related that to probably that use, and also because honey is a really important source of fermentation, really the most, I think the first source of fermentation for our ancestors. So yeah, but also I think there might be other explanations, but we really don't know what they were trying to say to us. We don't know who these populations were and where did they go after they left the Sahara, after the Sahara became a desert. There's just like nowadays we don't actually know who are the descendants of these people that were there at this time. So, but we just have the image that they left us to guess what they meant for it. But it's just really amazing that so many of them just look like mushrooms. Maybe I'm just crazy about mushrooms too, and I see mushrooms everywhere. But this is the place where the Man Shaman is in Tassili, Algeria. Nowadays, it's more Arab populations. The roundheads, they were actually Black people. They were nowadays the Sahara is more it's nomadic people that cross there. The Tuareg people cross those caverns nowadays. But yeah, this is the exact cavern where the Man Shaman is. And this, I really went into the cavern, of course, to see what other paintings, other carvings that there were close to the Man. And really interesting, there is this one that has this little guy fighting insects. I think they are locusts, right? And this little guy seems really angry. He's holding like something, and probably the locusts were causing troubles. Of course, they are insects that were known to be very troublesome in Africa, right? And in the Middle East as well. And then yeah, so this guy is, and there is like the locust flying away from whatever he's holding. And I was just like, oh my gosh, there were so many mushrooms that were used for either driving insects away or killing insects, being like the Amanita muscaria is called fly agaric for that reason, because it was used by indigenous populations as a poison against flies. A lot of indigenous population mix the Amanita muscaria with milk, so that attracts the flies and it kills the flies. And also like the chicken of the woods, it has a lot of sulfur in it, right? And sulfur is one of the things that people use in agriculture to drive the insects away, to kill insects, and also for virus and other things. So I was like, man, maybe they were using mushrooms to like drive away these insects. And it's in the same cavern that the Man Shaman is. And there are other Man shamans as well in other caverns of the desert. And also they do have some mushrooms on their shoulders as well. So it does seem like this, it was a kind of very important for them to, and yeah, other Man shaman over there. And there are a lot of scientific papers that do prove that puffballs have been used all around the world for the anesthesia of honeybees, for harvesting honey. And not only puffballs in Africa, and a lot of this study actually studied an African puffball because he heard about indigenous populations in Africa using this puffball to smoke beehives, and he got really interested and he went to research more about it. So, and there are still indigenous people in Africa. Of course, Africa is such a big continent, guys, and so many nomadic people, so many cultures. But there are people in Tanzania, in Ngorongoro and Serengeti National Park, the Maasai indigenous people, they are using earth stars to smoke beehives. And something really interesting is that they don't usually eat mushrooms, but they do use the earth stars for smoking beehives. So to see like how important it is, like the puffballs and earth stars, because they don't necessarily need to be consumed internally to be used. So it's very cool to know that. And nowadays we have poised them, it's saving the bees, which is really cool with mushrooms. And who would have known that it's such an ancestor knowledge? Probably he did know a little bit about it, of course, but it's such an ancestor knowledge, and he just like reapplying that knowledge to now to try to save the bees now with this tract of these polypore mushrooms, which the grandfather of Kewejinokwe already knew it was very pleasing for the honeybees. So it's a full circle. It's a really beautiful thing to see how so many people around the world are using mushrooms the same way, and not even communicating with each other, many times not even knowing about each other's existence as well. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about edible and medicinal mushrooms that I really love and I appreciate. And of course, all edible mushrooms, they have some medicinal benefits. So they are either very nutritious, they have high protein, high fiber, but a lot of mushrooms have antimicrobial properties, anti-tumor properties. They're very good for your immune system, very good for anti-aging. So this is just a beautiful world of medicinal uses. First, I just have a warning. Do not drink alcohol with certain mushrooms, okay? Do not drink alcohol if you're gonna eat the Coprinellus species, the coprinoid species. They have a substance that doesn't allow your body to metabolize the alcohol, which causes the intoxication. So coprinoid species are not good with alcohol, just to let you guys know that. Before I get into that, let me just drink some water. I've been so excited to talk about the desert truffles with you guys. This is like my latest research, and I just loved hearing about this so much. There are fungi all over the world, edible fungi, medicinal fungi all over the world being used by indigenous people, even in the deserts of the world, the Sahara Desert, the Kalahari Desert, the Australian desert, the desert from the Middle East. People are harvesting truffles in those places. And it's very different from Europe because they don't use animals. They use their own indigenous knowledge to find the truffles. And I mean, in the desert, it's a little bit easier to see the cracks that happen on the earth once the truffles swallow up, right? So they look for the cracks on the earth to find the truffles. And yeah, and they have so much knowledge, of course, about other things too. But it's really interesting to see that also refugees are dependent on truffle harvesting for economic reasons, for surviving many times too. Like there are refugees in the Sahara Desert harvesting truffles as one way of economic surviving. So it's very important for indigenous peoples all around the world, that as well. And it's very important for medicinal uses as well, the truffles, because the truffles have been used a lot for eyes problem. Actually, I found a lot of research that said that it was used for as an eye drop for antibacterial, antimicrobial problems that you have in your eyes with bacteria and all that. They use truffles, which is really awesome. And imagine that truffles happen very rarely when there's those rains in the desert. The rain is coming to the Kalahari Desert. It's so rare, right? But when there's thunder, indigenous people know there's going to be truffles. A lot of indigenous people know about that as well, guys. Thunder really does. Lightning, thunder and lightning, right? Lightning really does help mushrooms to grow. Like once the lightning hits the earth and the nitrogen goes into the earth, right? The nitrates, and there's more nutrients for plants and fungi. And then especially the mycorrhiza fungi, they get so happy with lightning, and they are just like, okay, we're gonna come up. So indigenous people always look for the lightning to know that the mushrooms are coming. So and the truffles, it takes a little like about 4 weeks for them to develop before they are mature enough to be harvested. So they wait, once they see the rain, they wait 4 weeks to go after the truffles and harvest them. And yeah, it's really amazing. We have some species here. We have the Tirmania species, the Terpazi species, and the Kozan people, they call the truffles eggs of the lightning bird because of the lightning. It's really beautiful. I love the eggs of the lightning bird. Amazing. Over here we have another really cool mushroom, really aromatic mushroom as well, because truffles are very aromatic too, and they play with our senses in that way, right? The aroma of truffles is so like it really plays with our memories. I remember the first time I ate a truffle, like I can just see it clearly the day that happened. And then we have the mushroom that tastes and smells like garlic. We have the Mycelium aliaceus here, guys. This mushroom, it tastes and smells like garlic. It's so amazing. It's like, the first time I found it was here in Brazil, where I'm living in now. And I just cried when I found it because I would smell all the mushrooms to see if it was him. It was one of my dreams to find the Mycelium, and it's so small. It's such a small mushroom. It's like a tiny mushroom, but it's as powerful as a garlic. It has a very powerful smell, and you can just tell right away it's the garlic mushroom. And yeah, and I take the cap, right, and I throw away the stem and the stipe, and I just put that into garlic. I put that into tomato sauces and pasta, and you just use it as a garlic, really. And then we have the amazing chicken of the woods that I also have in this region of Brazil. There's a lot of chicken of the woods, And I just get so excited when I eat it. I just want to bring that here because like the chicken of the woods, they do need some, you have to be a little bit careful when you eat it. It's a very strong mushroom. It does have a lot of sulfur in it. So Paul Stamets says that you look for mushrooms that are not totally fully mature, that are still like growing. So in the middle, we see here mushrooms that are still growing, right? That still have the white. So this white here, the mushroom is still growing. You see this white part here and the mushroom still growing. So that's a good mushroom to harvest. But once it's like fully mature and all that, it's kind of really strong. And also the consistency becomes a little bit harder. And it can give you a stomach upset as well. But it's really good to cook it well. I really cook my chicken of the woods really well when I harvest it. I do with butter, and then I can use in so many other ways after I do that. But like I cook it really well, and that's my recommendation. And I just love it. It never gave me any problem. It's like the best. Yeah, there's so many recipes all around. Chicken of the woods is amazing. You can do in barbecues too. This is an amazing edible mushroom, and also it has been used in Mexico for medicinal purposes as well. And Philippidia dominigensis is like so beautiful. It has like this pink, amazing color, and the texture is just like, it's hard, and it's just like a palm heart sort of texture. It's so good, but it does need protected environments. It needs like, I found in places of the forest that was just like tucked in into like these places of the forest that had like huge trees growing around. It was like a place that was kind of not very, almost nobody went there except me, because I go into places where people usually don't go. I'm kind of like a mushroom hunter, right? And then, yeah, the Philippidia dominigensis is just amazing edible mushroom that is a decomposer. I think it is possible to cultivate it for sure. And people all around the world should be cultivating it for their amazing color, amazing taste, amazing texture. Over here, we see when it's like more pink, it's fresher, right? It's better. When it starts to get old, it starts to get darker, and it goes into a purple, and then it goes into a black, sometimes kind of greenish as well. But yeah, so here is one of the articles that I read about Philippidia, and the first record of edibility of it was in Mexico, in Axtla de Texas. I'm sorry, my Spanish is so terrible. But anyways, it was in Mexico, and yeah, and some healers there also use it as medicine for asthma. They use the Philippidia they preserve the Philippidia in honey, and then give that honey for asthma. So and also there was a use in the skin as well. They would grind it and mix with salt and use for skin problems, for like bugs on the skin. And this is how I ate it, or how I prepared it. They don't add salt to Philippidia in Mexico. The indigenous population doesn't add salt to it because it has a good taste, really good taste. So they don't want to lose the taste, so they don't add salt. So I didn't add salt to my Philippidia as well, and it's just like completely amazing. It's really good to preserve honey, mushrooms in honey. It's one of the indigenous techniques of preserving the freshness of the mushroom and using it medicinally. And that's how it was done with many psychedelic species in Mesoamerica, in Mexico, in Central America, by indigenous peoples there. They used to preserve the mushrooms, the psychedelic mushrooms, in honey. And I wanna acknowledge that all these course, Maria Sabina, amazing Maria Sabina, and Inti Garcia, who is an amazing person who taught me about the honey and mushrooms, and who I really recommend that whoever wants to help Inti go to Esperanza Mazateca, and he's doing just an amazing work in the community of Maria Sabina, which is Maria Sabina, for who doesn't know, is was an amazing healer. And she used sacred mushrooms to heal people from all around the world. And she was just this amazing, good person. And yeah, I just want to thank all these indigenous Meso-American people, the Mazatec people, for preserving that knowledge, for still sharing that knowledge with us, and for being so welcoming, so amazing, wonderful people. And of course, Paul Stamets, who is an amazing teacher of psychedelic mushrooms of the world, of psilocybin mushrooms of the world. This book is one of the most amazing books for psilocybin mushrooms. And thanks to him, I know how to differentiate Panellus from psilocybe, from other mushroom species. And these are the mushroom stones, of course, very sacred to the Maya people. And so the Maya people, unfortunately, in Guatemala, have lost their traditions with the fungi. But of course, some of them have kept, just like Maria Sabina, she was able to keep her knowledge somehow, adapt to her existence, and heal other people with it, help people with it. So just shout out to these amazing Mazatec people out there. I now want to share about the Yanomami people in Brazil and how they are important for the mushrooms here in this country. They have kept so much of their knowledge about mushrooms intact, and they still use a lot of mushrooms. They cultivate their mushrooms in their agroforests. In their way of doing agriculture is very focused to having mushrooms as well as food. And this is amazing work that they left for us. That is the encyclopedia of the food of the Yanomami, which has recipes and the mushrooms they use. It's a really amazing book. It's on the language of the Yanomami and in Portuguese as well. It's not in English, unfortunately, but it's for whoever wants to support them. It's an amazing book. Anyways, Favallus brasiliensis is an amazing mushroom that it has like the underneath in the shape of honeycombs, sort of honeycombs, and it's an edible mushroom. And they eat it with they wrap it in banana leaves and eat it with fish. It's so similar to the pleurotus, guys, to the oyster mushrooms. If you look at them on the top of it, you right away you think, oh, it's an oyster mushroom, and then you look underneath, it's like, oh no, it's the Favallus, of course. And I find it much more Favallus than pleurotus in Brazil. The places that I've been to, they're much more common than the oyster species. The Favallus and they have so similar taste. They're so similar. You can just eat it the same way as you eat an oyster mushroom, cooking it. Yeah, it's and the way you recognize and the way you identify it kind of looks like a oyster mushroom, but with the honeycombs underneath. Kind of easy to identify it as well. Here we have the lentinus. Lentinus are amazing species, edible species that is all over Brazil. And this genus is most of, that I know of, all the mushrooms in this genus, they're edible. And the lentinus are all around Brazil as well. And there's so many species of lentinus, and they really like agroforests as well. So they really, they're together there with the food as if you're growing food the right way, if you're putting the organic material in the soil, the lynchings are going to show up as one of the decomposers of the wood. They love decomposing wood, and they like environments that are kind of more open in the sun. They really like gardens and agroforests around here. They're so beautiful. This one, he's fluffy. It looks like it's not, but like his hairs kind of looks like it's hard, but it's so fluffy. I love the Lentinus crinitus. You can eat it. It's the Yanomami have been eating it for ages, but they're kind of hard if especially when they get more mature, or when they get older. So I do make a lot of tea or broth with them. If the mushroom is too hard, I really recommend just making a tea or making broths. Mushroom broths are amazing. They're medicinal. They give the umami taste for your soups. And yep, it's all like, it's so good. Here we have the Schizophyllum commune, which is actually one of the most common edible mushrooms of the world. And it's also in a lot of places of the world, and it's medicinal as well. It has been used as a blood tonic by African indigenous people. It's also like a mushroom that it's very strong decomposer. Kind of have to be careful with the spores. Yeah. And then we have Tremella species as well. We have the Tremella species actually really like growing with Schizophyllum here in this region of the world. They are kind of, they are species that first they are yeast, they are unicellular fungi. And once they find another mushroom, they start parasitizing that mushroom, and then they become mycelium, and then they form fruit bodies. So it's a very interesting species, but they are cultivated in Asia because they're very appreciated for as an edible and medicinal mushroom. And so it's kind of hard to cultivate them because you have to cultivate another fungus and then inoculate with your Tremella species. But they are amazing edibles. They are very good in soup. They kind of like melt in your mouth once you do a soup with them. It's just so good. I made a soup with Tremella recently, and it was just really amazing. Adding that to the soup, it was really amazing. This is the witch's butter right here on the right, the Tremella mesenterica. The white one, the transparent one, is the Tremella fusiformis. And the fusiformis is more studied and more used in Asia. And it's a really good antioxidant and has been used for anti-aging properties for women, especially, of course, and but for also men, for wrinkles on your skin. It's very good for your immune system. Very used in medicinal traditional medicine. This fungi here, the Tremella mesenterica, the yellow one is known as witch's butter, and I love that name, that popular name. It does look like butter that a witch made. And here you see on this picture the Tremella mesenterica growing alongside with the Schizophyllum commune, parasitizing it. We have Ornaments species, which are really delicious mushrooms. They're really good with coconut oil. They melt. They are kind of more similar to the shiitake mushrooms in a way. They're very good flavor, very light, but also has shiitake sort of more side of flavor. You have to take the skin of the Odemanziella, this skin it kind of protects the gills of the Odemanciella, right, for them to get mature. So it's always good to get a knife and just scrape it out, this outer skin over here, before eating the Odemanciella. And I always cook it as well. But as you guys can see, my animals love eating Odemanciella, but they are so smart. As you can see, the squirrel here, he's just like eating the inner part. He's not eating the top layer. He's just like eating, he's holding the Odemanciella, just eating the gills of it. So yeah, nature is so intelligent. And here's a really good article that also talks about the cultivation of Odemanciella, which is really also the composer, really good for cultivating. So yeah, recommend this paper as well. It talks about the medicinal properties of Odemanciella, which is a really good antimicrobial, very medicinal. So this squirrel is eating food and medicine at the same time. And animals they have been using mushrooms for a long time. Mushrooms are also great for animals. These are my two cats. And I have been, Marley is 8 years old, Jackie is 12 years old, and I've been taking care of them with only plants and mushrooms, and they are very healthy. And puffballs and ganodermas have been my best friends in taking care of them, especially Jackie that has skin cancer. She's unfortunately, her ears has this spot that is just a little tumor, and the puffball, the earth star, is actually, it just have been holding it up and have been healing it. And I just have to thank the mushrooms so much for helping me in my life and helping my amazing animals and dogs around the world that I took care of. Bhakti, amazing Fungi Academy dog. I love Bhakti so much. I spent 2 months there taking care of her. When I arrived, she had a really like big rash on the side of her face, just like it was really hurt. She would be like scratching like all the time her face, and it would just keep worse. And I was like, oh my gosh, we need to do something about Bhakti. Of course, I always take care of the animals wherever I am. And then, yeah, Bhakti, I just started putting tinctures, like Ganoderma tinctures and turkey tails, and also giving her orally. And by the end of my stay, she was like 100%, as you guys can see, 100% Bhakti. Like, she was a new Bhakti. I love her. And then we have here Bear. Bear, it was my Lakota dog, my amazing Lakota dog that I would take care of him every time I went to the reservation. And yeah, he was like, I think he lived to be probably 18 years old or something like that. He unfortunately passed away last year. Couldn't be with him, but I would like give so much mushrooms, so many mushrooms and so many medicine for him whenever I went there. And he got to be so old and survive, and amazing Bear. And then we have here a hawk, a Brazilian hawk that I took care. He was also hurt. He was in this rehab center that I had in the nature spot in my town. And I got like polypore mushrooms, like turkey tails, and I just offered to him. I just went up and dropped some mushrooms, and he went to the mushrooms and just started eating it and was like saying thanks to me. It was so amazing. He would get out of my hands the polypore mushrooms that I would offer him. He healed super well. Was like when he first arrived there, he had like lumps on his chest, and he was like not looking good. And like by like couple weeks, he was just like completely good hawk, and he was able to go back to the wild soon after. It was just, yeah. And so birds and a bunch of animals use mushrooms. here are some of the amazing medicinal mushrooms that I've been using, like the Trametes. The Trametes genus is super medicinal, which is the turkey tail, the Trametes sanguinea. And I want to give a shout out to Ximena, who is an amazing dyer. And the Trametes, you can also use it as a dye, not only as a medicine, but as a dye. And I was just thinking, once you dye your clothes with Trametes, you're also getting the protection of the mushroom in your clothes as well. The Trametes is really good for skin problems. It's an amazing, this color that it produces is actually a really good defense against the UV rays. So it's really good for your skin as well, for healing cancer as well. So antimicrobial, I have been making so many teas with Trametes and also helping heal my animals with it. And here it is. I have like my little photo of me doing my dyeing with Trametes, and that was because of Ximena, who Bio Ximena, follow her in Instagram, and she she taught me how to do this amazing dye with Trametes, and I still use my clothes a lot. And natural dyes is something that we need to change. We have to stop using these artificial dyes that are so toxic to the environment. And plants and mushrooms are really great sources of colors. They're so colorful, right? And here's one example of just natural colors in the Casa Flor Izcaco. It's in Guatemala. These amazing Mayan women do all these amazing colors just with plants and insects and all natural things. This is just natural dyeing. And one thing that I recently researched about, which blew my mind, I love this work of New Zealand. Peter Buchanan did an amazing ethnomycology work for the Maori people, for the New Zealand Indigenous people. And the Maori people, one of their ancestors used the cordyceps mushrooms as inks for tattooing. So you can use cordyceps for, they used to burn the cordyceps and make as a charcoal. And it would be like this deep black, this really like real deep black that the cordyceps gets. And then they used for making natural tattoos, sacred tattoos that the Maori people did. So this is the amazing work of the Maori people here. This is the name I don't know how to say, but Peter Buchanan, who is an amazing ethnomycologist from New Zealand, was the person who wrote it. And there's so many amazing uses of mushrooms that the Maori people did. It's just, yeah, amazing. And this is, I just want to show you guys the Hexagonia species, which is a really medicinal species. It's very similar to the turkey tail, to the Trametes versicolor. But the difference between them is just like the pores. Instead of having like the round pores, the Hexagonia has a little bit bigger, but it's an hexagon shape. So that's the difference between them. But I've been using Hexagonia the same way I use turkey tail, and it's very amazing. It's the same. It's the same smell as well, and it has been used by Indigenous people the same way as we use turkey tail. So he's a very good other option of medicinal mushroom. And then we have the amazing Ganodermas, right? The fantastic, the most important, I think, maybe medicinal mushroom of the world, at least very well known. It's in almost every country. I think it's all over the world you find Ganodermas. All over the world you find Ganodermas. And you find Indigenous people using Ganodermas all over the world. And not only for the amazing medicinal use that Ganoderma has, it's the immortality mushroom for the Chinese people. Amazing for our immune system, right? But it has been used as a symbol of power. And Ganoderma sometimes grows in really weird shapes. And not only Chinese emperors, they venerated the Ganodermas, and the Ganodermas in weird shapes as well. They loved finding the weird shaped Ganoderma, but also like the Polynesian indigenous people had like Ganodermas as necklaces and symbols of power. And this one is a really interesting one over here. You guys see, it kind of looks like hands. It kind of, yeah, this is a really cool article. Robert Blanchett is amazing ethnomycologist. He's, I think he probably is one of the best ethnomycologists out there. And his articles are just amazing, always amazing. And Fungi magazine has a lot of Blanchett's articles, and always very interesting, like the best ethnomycology. And for one of the last things that I'm going to show you guys is the marasmius. I absolutely love these fungi. They're so small, but they have been used by birds to build their nests. So as you guys can see, the marasmiu has really thin and strong stipes that we call rhizomorphs. So these really thin here stems that they have, it's called rhizomorphs. And these rhizomorphs, they actually grow all over like the leaf litter. They're like expand throughout the leaf litter in the forest, underneath the logs and the leaves, and it gets to be really long sometimes. So so birds, they use them a lot for building their nests. They use the rhizomorphs to build the nests. As you guys can see here, this is the nest built with rhizomorphs of marasmius. And the Yanomami women, looking at how the birds use the marasmius, I think they had the inspiration to use the marasmius as well to make the ornaments of their baskets. So they use the threads, right? They gather the rhizomorphs all very carefully. They consider the threads of the marasmius, the rhizomorphs. They consider the pubic hair of the protector of the forest. So they know they have to be very gentle and careful with it. And it's very sacred, this relationship. It's the protector of the forest. It's a very sacred force. They have a lot of respect for this entity, and they gather it very carefully. They use everything they gather, all the threads that they gather. They put it together in a cord, as you guys can see here. So beautiful and amazing work, and use it to ornament their baskets. So these black parts that you see here are all marasmius. And like the patterns that you see in the baskets, they all have very deep and spiritual meaning as well. So this is all very sacred. So to finish, I just want to say there's so much more to be said. This is such a small time that I have here, and I'm making so much more things to share this knowledge in a better way as well. But one of my projects is here in Chapada Diamantina National Park, and I'm identifying and I'm collecting and identifying the mushrooms here with amazing group of researchers, teachers from different universities, cinematographers, and I'm really excited for that. It's gonna start to 2023. And we're gonna make a mushroom guide for this region. We're gonna try to bring a conscious tourism, because this is a very touristic place. And we wanna preserve this place. It really needs to be preserved, guys. This place is like completely endemic places around here. It's so sacred. These canyons, and you can only imagine like there's so many ecosystems in where I am right now, so many different weather that happens, like like different spots. It's very unique and it really needs to be preserved. It's so threatened. Everywhere is so threatened here in Brazil and all around the world. But in Brazil, has been such a big problem, the environment. We really hope that things are going to get better. And this next year, we're going to be working for that. We're going to train the guides here, the tracking guides from this place, to know more about the fungi so they can tell the tourists how to preserve fungi as well, not only plants, not only the animals, but there is the fungi that needs to be preserved here too. And I'm doing this I'm also doing an online course. Like I'm creating like a course that I basically bring you guys home to do tinctures and crazy recipes that I make up. And also just talk more in depth about the use of fungi and more fungi. This is the fungi that I talked about is just like so little of the species that are there and that can be used. I'm doing that with Instituto Esfera, but it's in Portuguese for now, guys. English will be in the future. I'm trying to finish the Portuguese course now, doing materials, writing books. I'm writing a book too. And I just want to say, give a shout out for people from the US. Mom LA is coming, the Museum of Mycology of Los Angeles, for everyone, for the whole world, actually. It's this amazing group of friends and amazing people that are bringing themselves together. We're getting together to create this amazing space for everyone, for the whole world to come see ancient uses of mushrooms, to come see new uses. We want to have a planetarium that will show mycelium networks. We want to have like a restaurant for the community. We want to have a cultivation space, and we want to be more than a museum. We want to be like really a center for the mycelium and bringing people mycelium together. And yeah, we really need support for that. So here's the website, Mom LA. We're just opening and getting donations together. So please do help if you can too. And yeah, many projects to come. I really hope that I can bring all this knowledge to more Indigenous people. That's one thing that I really want to do in my life. And I'm connecting with a lot of Indigenous people here in Brazil at the moment. I met some of them, and I really want to take that to the peoples, back to the peoples, this knowledge. And yeah, I just want to say miigwech, wopila, gracias, obrigada. Thank you for being here. I hope everyone got to learn a little bit about the mushrooms and enjoyed a little bit about it too. But yes. Angel.
Wow, that was so amazing. Oh my gosh. My heart is so full. It's so mushy right now. Thank you so much. And there were a few questions that came up. One has to do with the fermenting mushrooms with honey. Sean, I'm going to take you off mute if you want to ask your question out loud. Let me find you real quick. Okay, you should be able to talk now if you want to ask your question.
Hey, Angel. Hey, Mariana. Thank you so much for this. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, so my question was, I had read that when you ferment, I've done some blue honey and I've done some fermentation with the psilocybes for microdosing, but I've also read and I've added to that fermentation nutmeg, clove, and cinnamon that's been ground up, as well as some cordyceps, because I heard that those can actually work from an efficacy standpoint or just from a preservation or just augmentation standpoint. I read that somewhere. I heard it on a podcast. I just want to know if you might know anything about that, or if there's anything you can add to or could add to the honey besides just mushrooms. And I'll listen. But thank you so much and appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, use your creativity. That's how I did it as well. I used to make a lot of mushroom beers and fermentation with honey, using a lot of polypore mushrooms too, Ganoderma. Actually, Paul Stamets gives a really good tip in one of his books about amadou, and about amadou being a really good mushroom to ferment, because it has also like other bacteria or other things partnering up with it that make the fermentation process like better. So yeah, I just be creative, like mushrooms that are good for certain kind of things. Like I want to build my immune system, so look for the mushrooms that will do that, and you can make a beer or you can preserve them in honey. Yeah, you can do so many things with honey and mushrooms. Once you have like the water content in honey, if you add fresh mushrooms to the honey, it will probably start a fermentation process, because like adding water to the honey is basically, that's what makes the mead. That's the easiest way of fermenting something is mead, because it's simply adding water and honey together. So that already starts the process of fermentation. So
Okay.
this is just like some details.
So if you don't, if you don't mind, if I can jump in again, Angel. So you could do it wet, then you don't have to dry them out. You can put them in wet then.
Yeah, you can put them. Yeah, definitely can use them fresh for sure. That if you're doing a fermentation, especially because it has water content, so it would just like be a part of it. But I prefer using fresh mushrooms than dry mushrooms. I always prefer using fresh mushrooms for everything.
Awesome, thank you. And what was the name of the one that Stamets mentioned? That mushroom again? You said would help.
The amadou, the Fomes fomentarius. That's the one that Otzi the Iceman also used to carry fire. That's the horse hoof mushroom, amadou, Fomes fomentarius.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, Rachel, I'm going to take you off mute and you can ask your question. And she also asked a question about, like, for a beginner that's really wanting to get better at ID. While this talk didn't get into the details of like identification, we do have a free class coming up. It's going to be in Buda, but we're also live streaming it. And so I dropped a link in the chat. And so if anybody is wanting to get better identification, Mason from the Leadership Circle, he's going to be teaching you all the things you need to do, all the language and ways to look at mushrooms in a way that will help you observe them better. But I personally think just spending time on iNaturalist, looking at other pictures of what other people are seeing in your area and getting that seasonality and that timing going is a good way to really get familiar and recognize mushrooms and learn, learn their gestalt.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That link. My other question was, how would you recommend like getting involved with like local Indigenous communities, especially like I know you mentioned land back earlier, but if you had like any other, recommendations.
Yeah, most definitely. So I'm a person that doesn't have money. Like I actually don't have a lot of money at all throughout my life too, unfortunately. I hope I can change that. But how I did it, like because of that, it was just giving my time as well. My time to projects that it's already running. They're already doing it, and I just offer my time and work. And usually it's in the garden or teaching teaching about mushrooms. That's two ways that I do of giving back. It's also like bringing my talents to them and having that knowledge to offer to them as well. But like sitting down with them and just listening to them and just connecting and being friends with them, it's like a huge step. And how you start that, it's by probably going to events maybe that you have around here, around your region, if there are probably tribes there. That's how I do. Like where I am right now, unfortunately, Indigenous people have been destroyed. And the remains of the Indigenous people from here, it's like they are 3 hours away, and it's just one little town, Uchinga. But like there's still one leader that is he's still very active. He's trying to regenerate his culture, and even being just one person, he's like I got to know him because he's a writer, and he came here and did a library. He went to the library and did a talk there about his book. And it's just by going to these events and looking for indigenous events that are happening, like powwows are happening in the US all the time. I love going to the powwows. It's just like so amazing. The powwows happen all over the United States. There are so many active tribes, active indigenous people in the US. But yeah, you have to look your region really, and just one way is also just being with the plants. It's honoring that and giving back to the land too. Once you take care of your garden and bring native plants back, and that's also respecting indigenous, other indigenous people that are there in the place. It's not only indigenous peoples, but also like the native fungi, the native plants that are also very important that we need to restore and regenerate.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Rachel. And I put a link in the chat of a Central Texas project that you can support, the Texas Tribal Buffalo Project. And I know Giving Tuesday is coming up, and so that's like a good opportunity to reach out and see if you can help them monetarily. I know they have other ways you can support them as well. They have a lot of volunteer opportunities to come help with their regenerative program that they have going on.
Yes, and they were the nicest people that I've met. Like they were so like embracing, and everywhere that I met indigenous people and sat down, had tea and ate some food with them, they're just so generous, and it felt like home. Because I was also like an outsider in the US, right? I was an immigrant there, so I had the indigenous people to really like open their arms and say, hey, you're very welcome. You're in this land and you're family now. And they really like, once your friends, your family, many times they adopt you. Many times.
Okay, any other questions? I don't see any. Let's all thank James tonight for providing the Spanish interpretation, and let us know if you all were able to take advantage of that. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to our Spanish speaking community and they're able to enjoy our programs as well. And we hope to have more interpretation in the future as well. So if you have a way of like helping out with that, contributing to that, we can even pay people to provide interpretation. So please let us know if you can provide those services. So yeah, Mariana, that was so amazing. This was such a good talk, and thank you so much for staying up late with us and providing your knowledge. And
yes.
We hope
Thank you so much, Angel.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You're so wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, James. Thank you, Angel. Thank you so much.
Everybody, well, yes. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, and we will say farewell. And like I said, the recording will be on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch things, share it with other friends, please do. And smash that like button.
Thank
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Did I leave?